Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Burn City D-backs Talk podcast. I'm Michael McDermott, joined here today by Jacob Hardin. We're going to talk about the Diamondbacks' successful Southern California road trip, the All-Star Game, and a quick preview of the 2024 MLB Draft next weekend. So anyway, Jacob, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Michael. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's been a long week, but the Diamondbacks have once again successfully kept their season alive. They went 4-6 in a road trip, taking both series against the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Diego Padres. They sit at 45-45, and 2 games out of a wild card spot, and starting to feel good about themselves as they take on the Atlanta Braves for 4. So, what were your thoughts on that road trip?
Yeah, I liked what I saw for the most part. I mean, obviously, it should have been 6 of 6. Obviously, you can't expect them to go 6-6 in a road trip like that. But if it weren't for those 2 blown saves, although one of those blown saves was kind of in a game where they really had no business of being in that situation in the bottom of the ninth, but could make the argument it could be 6-6 without that Paul with those pair of Paul Sewald blown saves. Other than that, they did what they needed to do. Those 2 wins against the Padres were extremely important because now instead of 4 games out, they're only 2 games back from the Padres in that third and final wild card spot in the National League. But other than that, I think the bats did what they need to do. I liked the Diamondbacks. I know it's something about those division matchups where you play them a lot, so you know them well, you know their pitching. But the D-backs have seemed to have the Dodgers numbers as of late over the past year, I would say. We saw it in NLDS last year. We even saw it during the regular season last year. And it's good to see that's continuing this season because in years past, those games against the Dodgers come in right off. That's going to be, maybe they'll take one or that's a sweep. But now I think the Diamondbacks have the confidence that they need against the Dodgers and even now against the Padres. So I liked what I saw. How about yourself?
Yeah, I like the fact that their offense kind of finally got into the gear. Scoring late was it's been a big bug with this season. First 84 games, they'd scored 109 runs in the 7th inning or later. Last 6 games, they scored 28. So being able to score those runs to either come back in the case of the first game against San Diego, even though they didn't win, but come back in that situation down 5 in the 9th, they ended up scoring 6, or taking a close ball game, so a 1-1 game on Sunday, facing a pitcher that's had their number throughout his career, and they ended up turning that game from a pitcher's duel into a laugher. So that's kind of the impact of having that late offense. But also, I think there have been some guys that have really stepped on the road trip. Suarez, 8 for 19. He got on base 13 times. And his struggles have been a focal point throughout various spots in the season, but the fact that he's been able to put together of late shows that the Diamondbacks are still in a position to make things happen offensively, and that their best situation at third base is to keep playing him. Then, of course, the return of Gabriel Moreno, and Moreno's really lit it up recently offensively. In fact, he's pushed his OPS plus past 100, so he's back to being an above-average hitting catcher to go with that Gold Glove level defense that we saw last year. Then having Alek Thomas back, he had that big grand slam against San Diego, but the impact you mostly see with the glove. I think he had a couple plays where if you had Corbin Carroll in center field, those become hits, maybe even extra base hits instead of outs. Like, for example, the final game against the Dodgers, he had that one play where Andy Pages hit a slice, kind of like an in-between liner that was well placed, but Thomas was able to flag it down at the last second. Having that extra, I would say extra foot off jump, I think is going to be important as the Diamondbacks try to work on preventing as many runs as they can. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, they had a couple key at bats too. And of course, Randall Grichuk. He had a good at bat against the Dodgers, and then he had his 2-run home run. He's been really good off the bench for them. That's been a key bat that they've been able to rely on in a pinch hitting. Those pinch hitting situations are always the toughest. Jose Herrera, starting in place of Gabriel Moreno, had that nice double in game 2. And then they were able to bring in Gabriel Moreno later in the game. The one bat that I was disappointed was, and although he had the solo home run to snap that month-long drought, was Corbin Carroll. And I know we could kind of talk about, you briefly talked about the glove with Alec Thomas, but the line drive of Corbin Carroll's head in Game 2, it kind of seemed like he took a step in, and then kind of took a couple steps back, and then was late on it. I don't know if he would have gotten to it. It seemed like he misread it to me. In that same game, he went 0 for 5. He had 5 strikeouts over the road trip, which is not something you typically see from Carroll, as his struggles all year has been just putting the ball on the ground and not being able to get any elevation on it. But it seemed like his batting average is kind of maintaining at 210, and everyone's kind of waiting for that finally, like, Corbin Carroll road trip or homestand for him to take off. And I've been really disappointed that he hasn't gotten at least kind of a little hot streak going.
Yeah, the nice thing about the San Diego series is he ripped off 3 extra base hits. He had 2 doubles in the first game and the leadoff homer in the third. So there's a little bit, but like I said, but like you said, there hasn't been a sustained run of him doing a lot of damage. Although I think he had a decent 2-week stretch at the beginning of June where he went from hitting 180 to about 215, and he's kind of maintained that area, kind of that 210 to 215 range with the average. The OPS has been right in about the 600 to 620 range for Carroll. But he hasn't really had that I'm back type run that you typically see when a star level player gets off to a slow start.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other just main focus, we'll talk about the Christian Mena start, and just that lack of that arm in their rotation that they could find. And I know they're giving Diaz a shot tonight against the Braves, but what were your thoughts on that start from Mena?
I think in that first inning, I think nerves kind of got to him. He was overthrowing. I think he was trying. In some cases, the pitchers may be trying too hard to embarrass the hitter instead of getting them out. Although as that start started to unfold, and after getting blasted, it's like, okay, you're probably not going to be able to make the start respectable, but you could try and see how long you can last. And of course, Mena ended up going, I think, 3 innings in that game, and it was pretty obvious they were going to have to use the bullpen for a lot of that game because it's the Dodgers. 2, it's a pretty close game. It was a 4-4 game when they pulled him, and also 4-4 game and a chance to win, and they didn't want to go down 0-2 in that series.
Yeah, I mean, that's to make your major league debut. I know Betts wasn't in that lineup for the Dodgers, but to make your major league debut and you have to face Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani in the first inning, that's a tough confidence thing. In Dodger Stadium too, that is just a really hard place to make your major league debut from someone trying to make an impression on the Diamondbacks. So I do think, if circumstances were better, I think he could have delivered a much better start. If he weren't playing the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium, but it is how it is. And I think bringing Diaz up is the right call. Especially he struck out 13 batters in a 6-inning shutout on July 1st for the Aces. And he's kind of a guy that wasn't really expected. He came out of AA about a month ago. He got pulled up to AAA, and he's quickly made his stride there. So what are you expecting tonight for Diaz against the Braves?
I think if I were Atlanta, I try to make sure he throws strikes early in the game because Diaz does have a history of wildness, especially before this year and in the first month of the season. He was kind of all over the map, although since the start of May, Diaz has kind of honed in the walks a little bit. He's been jumping ahead. And he's a type of pitcher that could give Atlanta fits if he's in the strike zone because of his high velocity fastball, swing and miss breaking balls. And I believe he also throws a changeup, but that's like a distant fourth pitch. It's not even a major league average pitch. But if he's able to, basically what you're looking for Diaz is if he's able to spot the fastball to what Tori likes to say, to the lines. So the edge of the box, so where you see the box in the broadcast, that's where you want to see Diaz hit his fastballs at. Because you're able to hit those spots, there's gonna be a lot of swings and misses, and the Braves are gonna have trouble catching up to his fastball.
Yeah, and back to the bullpen a little bit. I know we talked about Paul Sewell, but I was impressed by what the bullpen was able to do. They were obviously, I would say, really overworked, especially, they got some short starts in the Dodger series. They're already a little bit tired heading into San Diego. And then it seemed like every inning they were coming in was extremely high leverage. you in front of massive crowds, some guys that really weren't just used to that, really high leverage situations. One guy that stood out to me was Kevin Ginkel. Obviously, he had that huge outing against the Padres. We came in the fifth inning, struck out 4 batters. What were, besides, we'll neglect what Paul Sewald did, what were some performances from the bullpen that you think are kind of positive going forward and something they could at least build upon?
Yeah, for like I said, Ginkel's the one guy in this bullpen that's been in that situation because he was in that situation last postseason.
Yep.
As the primary bridge to Seawald, and then you look at Thompson was pretty much next in the line. Mantiply's been there before. So those are your 4 experienced guys. I think we also have to talk about Justin Martinez and his absurd sinker where it's coming in 100.
Yeah.
For if you want to talk about, it's like, here's a callback to the past. I refer to Justin Martinez's sinker as Brandon Webb plus 12 miles an hour. So, talking about probably one of the best pitchers ever put on a Diamondbacks uniform. If we're talking about Webb, similar sinker movement, but it's coming in 100 instead of 88 to 90. We saw in that game against the Dodgers how easily he was able to manhandle the hard part of their lineup. He struck out Freeman, he struck out Ohtani. 5 strikeouts in the day in total, and that came after a pretty disastrous outing in the first game of that series where he walked the first batter and then served up a 2-run homer before getting an out.
Brentstrom seems to have he knows something about the Dodgers. He's been able to navigate them extremely well since he's joined the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks pitchers have, especially, I would say, Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman. You saw what they did in the NLDS last year, but it's continuing into this season where it seems like their scouting reports. I would say are one of I trust them going into those type of games, even when they have an inexperienced starting pitcher and then a bullpen that's not used to pitching in those leverage situations. They've still been able to navigate those. So Brentstrom did a tremendous job when it comes to handling the Dodgers.
Yeah, and I'll probably also like to give credit to Dan Herron and the Troy Lavella calls them the run prevention team. These are front office guys that look at video. They analyze trends, and that's how they build the scouting reports for the players. And I believe Dan Herron's actually at the head of that as well. Because if you remember correctly, Dan Herron was a guy that, when he came to Arizona, when he was in Oakland A, he was a guy that threw 95 with a wipeout slider changeup. He had to reinvent himself a little bit as a Diamondback, and then later in his career, where he kind of had to, because he was losing velocity and movement, so he kind of reinvented his slider into a cutter and his changeup into a splitter as a Diamondback. He was throwing, I think, low 90s when he was here. But he ended up reinventing himself into a 2-time All-Star as a Diamondback, and then got them a substantial haul at the trade deadline in 2010 that made an impact all the way through the 18 season, with Patrick Corbin being the best player from that trade.
Patrick Corbin was one of a kind in his prime before he joined the Nationals.
Yeah, so moving on ahead to the Braves series, bit of information to add. The Braves have pushed back Chris Sale one day, so we're going to get the Gallen-Sale matchup on the Tuesday game. I know Lindsey Crosby is going to be who I talked to on my own podcast. He was pretty hyped about the Sale versus Gallen matchup. That's going to be must-see TV. And we're going to see, I believe, the best pitchers on the Diamondbacks versus the best pitchers on the Braves this series. So you see this as a potential playoff series preview?
Yeah, I think the Diamondbacks match up well against the Braves right now. Braves, it seems like it's the first season since 2020 where they're not just dominant. They're still a really, really good baseball club. They're 6-6 over the last 12, and they've kind of just been staggering. Their offense just isn't what it has been in series past. You have Ozuna, who's in the crap out of a baseball right now, but they just don't have kind of just the Braves magic that they've had in years past. And I like how the Diamondbacks set up at home with Zach Gallen on the mound. Last season, they also had I would say they played the Braves in June. They took 2 of 2. They took 1 of 2, and then they beat the Braves on the road 2-1. So I think they tied the season series 3-3, and I think they've kind of always been, um, like I said, it match up well. So I could see this going a 2-2 split, um, or the Diamondbacks take 3 of 1. The Braves aren't necessarily a team that I would be afraid of as much as I would be last year. But yeah, they're going to be making the playoffs. I don't see how they don't lock up that number 1 wild card spot with the Phillies running away. But I think that they can take the 2-2 series split here, and I think that's honestly what you kind of have to aim for with a series against the Braves.
So we know that without so Acuna's out for the year. Harris is down with a hamstring injury. The Braves don't have much of a running game with their current roster. More, as you said, Ozuna, Olsen, Riley are built to slug the baseball. So it's the thing of, if the Diamondbacks can keep the Braves in the ballpark, I think they have the advantage, because I don't think Atlanta can manufacture runs as successfully without getting the big hit. Whereas on the Diamondback side of things, the key is going to be for their speedsters to get on base. So Carroll, McCarthy, Thomas, Perdomo, get those guys on base, because Atlanta isn't necessarily a good team at shutting down the running game. I think that's going to be a big key for the Diamondbacks, since they're going to be dealing with some power pitchers in that series, Sale, Fried, although on Tuesday and Wednesday, so they're going to have very few opportunities to score in those particular games. So this is actually a curious. Stat. I want to get your opinion on this, but we're talking about. It seems like this series is going to turn into a race to 5, in my opinion. So the Braves have they're ranked. They have the 11th worst record when they allow 5 or more runs at 4-21. Of course, they allow the 5 runs the fewest amount of times in Major League Baseball, compared to the Diamondbacks, who are near the top of the league. I think they're 11th most games of 5 more runs allowed. The Diamondbacks are 6 and 36. So I believe that's where it's going to come down to, a race to 5 runs.
Yeah. Obviously, the Diamondbacks are dealing with, like we've been talking about, just inexperience with their starting pitching staff. But I think you could be confident that Gallen's going to give you 6 innings. And I think you can also be confident that Fogg's going to give you 6 innings, at least.
Yeah.
I'll say at least 5 innings. He's been generally good at home, and he's been starting. I think at the beginning of the season, he was looked at as like he'll be the 5th man in their rotation, and now he's number 2. So, but I trust Fogg at home. I think he has been doing his job. So I think those 2 games are going to be the games that the Diamondbacks win. Here's a note: the Diamondbacks haven't won 3 games in a row since the first week of June. They've always they keep getting these 2 wins, and whether they're on a road trip or a homestand, they'll lose 1, win 2, lose 1. And that seems to be their never-ending cycle. So if they get a win tonight, that would be big, just to get build upon a little bit of a winning streak. That we talked about this last episode. It's just been mid. Like, that's the only way you can use to describe it. So that 3rd win would just be a little bit of an inch in the right direction, where you're getting, okay, now we have a 3-game winning streak. Whereas we're not just hitting a roadblock at 2, losing 1, and then having to start over again.
Yeah, I think that the problem with that is the starting pitching just isn't consistent.
Yeah.
So even with
yeah.
In terms of avoiding those disaster starts, I mean, Gallen's your best pitcher. Your next best pitcher at that is Fott, and then Ryan Nelson as your 3rd best pitcher, avoiding the 5 run or more start. So I actually wrote that down in an article. So I'm going to include Nelson's 2 bulk outings against the Dodgers. So Gallen is one of 13. Gallen, I believe, is one of 13. 13 starts. Gallen's only given up 5 runs in 1. And that was against San Francisco. Brandon Fott, 4 times in 18 starts. Nelson, 4 and 16. Those are the 3 guys that are under 30%. So then you go to the guys that have been a downright disaster in the rotation. Montgomery is 4-13. Tommy Henry, 4-7. Slade Ciccone, 4-12. And it has been a little bit disappointing that Montgomery seems to have that frequent blow-up start.
Yeah.
Instead of just the... Yeah, this happened to be at home. But yeah, that's kind of the thing with me. For the Diamondbacks, when the 5-run mark is usually the indicator if they'll win or not. When they don't give up 5 runs, they're 39-9. Only 2 teams have a better winning percentage. But I'll have to double check that. They might have passed the team. But I believe 5 runs is just a good metric in Major League Baseball because obviously the average league ERA is a little bit over 4.
Yeah.
So yeah, Arizona's 3rd. They're behind Philadelphia and Boston for winning percentage when they allow 4 runs or fewer. That's where I said, like I said, it's a race to 5. Neither team does well when they give up 5 runs or more with the Braves series. So, you got any last thoughts on that on the upcoming series? Like I said, 4 night games, 6:40 start time. It's gonna be a very late game, no day games either.
No, I mean that obviously that's a tough stretch when you have Dodgers, Padres, Braves, 3 most likely playoff teams in the National League. So we keep kind of talking about, we talked about with what we wanted to see from the Dodgers Padres series, and it was like just stay at 500. Now it's kind of the same for the Braves series, and that's what you have to do during these stretches. You take 3 or 4, great, but you obviously you want to take care of business against Toronto, but first you just got to finish off this really tough stretch of 3 playoff caliber teams. And I think luckily for the Diamondbacks, the Braves aren't exactly the typical Braves right now.
What would it say to you if the Diamondbacks went 6-4 or better in those 10 games?
I would say starting pitching stepped up. That I think that if when you have offenses, 3, I guess you can't. I'll put the Braves in a good offense category for now, because they do still have a good offense. They're just not heating up right now. 3 good offenses. The only way you get by that is by your starting pitching stepping up, and then you get the timely hits, which they did in those 2 series. They got timely hits. Starting pitching didn't exactly step up. They did get a good start from Nelson, but it's been a grind. Both those wins against the Padres were grinds. You had to have a performance from Suarez to step up and have a big game at the plate. You had to have a good outing from Nelson on the mound. Of course, the win the night prior was the definition of a grind. You had to have some bullpen performances from players who aren't used to those leverage situations. You had to have big hits in those timely situations. And then against the Dodgers, it's always going to be a grind when you're beating the Dodgers. So 6-4, I think you'll take that. Those are games that I'll say you want to go 500 against. And with the Diamondbacks position right now in the wild card spot, when you're only 2 games back, if you can keep your record along that 500 mark, you're at least preventing the front office from selling at the deadline. So if you can go 6-4 in that stretch, you're preventing a catastrophe where the second half of the season is thrown down the drain.
All right, so we'll segue here into the All-Star game. So we have note on Diamondbacks All-Stars. Ketel Marte has been named the National League starting second baseman over the last week, holding off Luis Ariz in the fan voting. And Marte will be the only All-Star representing the Diamondbacks this year. Let's talk about Ketel first. So we don't know yet if Marte is going to be doing the home run derby. Only 4 of the 8 names have been announced so far, but it'll be Marte's second All-Star game and second start. He started in 2019. Are you surprised that Marte was named the starter?
No. You're up against a Padres large market team of voting, but it was clear based off every metric except hits and batting average, which only gets you so far, that Marte was the deserving second baseman to be the starter.
All right, so from Marte to Walker. Walker was not named a National League All-Star game, All-Star reserve. Instead, Freddie Freeman and Pete Alonso were named the National League All-Star reserves. And of course, Freeman's All-Star candidacy is certainly not up for debate, but we can certainly talk about how if you thought Walker got snubbed and whether Alonso should have gotten in the first place. or if there was someone else on the Mets that was more deserving.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is the different players between Walker and Alonso and how they performed over the past couple weeks. They've been very different. Walker, on one hand, has really heated up. He's raised his batting average from 250 to 268 since June 29th. He has at least 2 hits in 6 of his last 8 games. And obviously, he had those 5 home runs against the Dodgers. However, a majority of this performance came after the voting deadline closed. Meanwhile, for Pete Alonso, he's really kind of been doing the exact opposite. He has 10 straight games with a strikeout, 12 strikeouts in those last 10 games. And then he's seen his batting average dip to nearly its lows in the beginning of June. So you've seen these two polar opposite outcomes. Unfortunately, these happened after the results were pretty much in. And for Pete Alonso, what he has going for him too is that this will be his 3rd straight All-Star game. So a lot of times he's already been elected to 2 in a row heading into this. So much better chance to get his 3rd one in a row rather than Christian Walker sneaking in for his 1st.
Yeah, and I think also the thing with Alonso is Alonso, if he's in the All-Star game, he's going to be in the home run derby.
Yep.
So I think MLB, it's possible that MLB put him in there for the home run derby. I'm pretty sure they did that last year as well. And of course, for me, it's a little bit frustrating to see a guy like Walker get, I guess you can say, isn't necessarily appreciated by the league itself compared to the players that he shares a locker room with. That's kind of where I feel at it personally, where it's like Walker's been a successful perseverance comeback story, whereas a talented player that just didn't get an opportunity until he's 28 and getting that opportunity in the 2019 season, he's taken it and run with it. He's replaced arguably the best position player to put on a Diamondbacks uniform, Paul Goldschmidt, and the drop-off has been close to unnoticeable over the last 5 years.
On the bright side, maybe brings his price tag a little bit down in free agency.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks definitely don't really have a ideal answer for if they were to let Walker walk in free agency. That's for sure.
No.
So, yeah, I feel like with Walker, the timing just wasn't there. Like, it looks worse now when you compare the two because of the hot stretch that Walker had against the Dodgers, where he basically, I guess you can say, added about 40% of his WAR. He started the series with 2 WAR. He ended it with almost 3. And of course, when you go on a run like that, you're going to look pretty good to start with. All right, so let's talk about the Futures game. So Davison De Los Santos and Drew Jones will be representing the Diamondbacks in the Futures game, which will be played a week from Monday. You'll see them in action. I'll have to double check to see where they'll be broadcasting it to. But there'll be a chance for the Diamondbacks to see one of their top prospects in Drew Jones and another prospect that's banging on the door in De Los Santos. So what are you looking to see out of that game?
Yeah, I want to see something from Drew Jones. It's his since he was drafted, it's been kind of sad. I know it was a couple of days after he's drafted, taking batting practice at Chase Field, shoulder injury. And then since then, it's just been injury after injury, and he just hasn't been able to find his footing. And he was once number 2 rated prospect. He was once a top 5 rated prospect in the MLB's list, and since then he's really just he's still in single A, correct?
Yeah, he's going to spend most of the year down there.
Because and this would be a big game if he can, pick up a couple hits or at least a hit. Maybe flash his glove in center field. It would be really nice to see kind of him, show his face again, let everybody know, hey guys, I'm still here. And when you talk about Diamondbacks prospects, you don't talk about the guy they drafted number 2 overall a couple years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say for Drew Jones, this is basically, since he lost most of the year last year, this is essentially his real first year in the system. So you're probably, so it's an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity to get some at-bats, get some reps in. Well, not the game itself, but the season. Mm-hmm. And then you go from there. That's kind of where injuries hurt you in this situation, especially when you have injury early in the season and then you suffer another one coming back from that. And basically 80% of your season gets wiped out right there. I don't think Jones got back to Visalia until August last year. Whereas this year he's been healthy. He's been able to get the reps offensively, defensively. His strikeout rate has been slowly dropping. I think it's down to 29%. It was for much of the season. It was in the it was in the 30s. It's been slowly coming down. The walk rate is held pretty consistent with last year. It's in the 15 percentile range. The only thing that bothers me a little bit is just his swing sometimes can get a little bit out of control. His feet, I think his footwork can be an issue when he swings, because sometimes that back leg fires wildly. Sometimes that front leg will open up too early. But I think it's a case where you just let him have that season and you work on improving in the off season and the next season and building from there. So let's talk about De Los Santos. Obviously, De Los Santos lighting up AAA. We'll pull up. Depending on what the direction of the season, De Los Santos could be a late season call up to give him some at bats. But where the Diamondbacks are positioned right now, I don't see a situation where he's going to get everyday at bats this season, unless they were to stumble out of the All-Star break and the team just decides to sell. But I don't think that's going to happen unless this Diamondbacks were to suffer an injury or some kind to a key player.
Yeah, I would love to see him hit a home run. That would be a lot of fun. I love him. He's one of those guys that makes the highlight reel. He hits those, towering blasts, and he'll do it maybe once every other game. And he's been kind of struggling a little bit at the plate. But even struggling for him is, I want to say he's still hitting over 320. So I would say this is. I mean, his rise has been exponential for him to be in the futures game this quickly. So I'm looking forward to watching him.
Yeah, I was going to say in De Los Santos' case, I think part of the bad year and a half, I would say, that he had last year, the bad fall league showing where everyone has a better look at him. I think that definitely hurt his prospect stock a little bit, but he was able to right the ship this year. And it's also worth noting that a prospect as young as him, sometimes it's never a linear development path. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, especially when you have a 21-year-old that has an aggressive approach at the plate.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check the chase rate for AAA, but let's see, where is it? It's been sitting in the 43 to 44% range, and that's, if that were in the major leagues, that'd be close to the top, close to the highest. But as we said before, the key for him is to force major league pitchers close to and into the strike zone to try and get him out. If pitchers are able to get him the chase, then he's in trouble at the major league level with the type of stuff that he would have to contend with. And I think that's where the futures game comes in. You're going to see pitchers with major leagues. He's going to see pitchers with major league stuff. So we'll see how that goes. So any final thoughts on futures game? What do you want to see out of both players? I know you'd already talked about Jones, but
not exactly.
All right, so we'll round it off. The 2024 MLB Draft will be next Sunday, July 14th. July 14th, the Diamondbacks will have 4 picks on the first night of the draft, picking at 29, 31, and 35. 29 is their first round pick, with 31 being the pick the Diamondbacks got for Corbin Carroll winning Rookie of the Year, and 35 being their selection. 35 being their competitive balance lottery pick selection. So with the chance to get 3 I think the chance to add 3 impactful prospects to the roster, do you think this is going to be a big draft for Diamondbacks, perhaps the biggest since 19?
Yeah, that obviously they're not picking like they have been in years past, but for the first time, it seems like that they're not known for their minor league system. I saw a recent rank. I think it was Bleacher Report did a rank, and they were ranked like 23rd or something when it comes to their farm league system. And their prospects, I wouldn't say are drying out, but they're definitely not up there. When you used to talk about the Diamondbacks a couple years ago, it was a never-ending cycle of prospects that they had ready that were going to be up in the leagues that we're now watching today. So this is a big draft. I think they've kind of, I see a Tommy Troy, Jordan Lawler, Drew Jones, all kind of, I wouldn't say haven't been what they expected, but haven't exactly rounded out perfectly yet. So I think this is a big draft to kind of get some more prospects, and that they have a lot of draft capital to get some more prospects back into that system to continue to build.
Yeah, I was gonna say Diamondbacks are kind of in a weird position. Their draft strategy is gonna depend on how since they're drafting 29. There's a lot of routes teams can go. They could go under slot, and college guys could go off the board early, or it's a situation where teams feel like a talented high school player is more signable, so those college performers might drop in the draft, which I think would be the better outcome for the Diamondbacks. Mock drafts have Malcolm Moore and Walker Yannick as the 2 draft picks. I mean, it's the 2 at the 29th pick. To me, both players aren't necessarily guys I would give the full signing bonus at 29, but it could open up the possibility for them to take a discount at 29 and then use the savings there to take a talented high school player that falls, like a Kellen Lindsley, Cash Mayfield, Son Hill. Those are some of the different names that have been floated about in these mock drafts. You can see which team the Diamondbacks are at on this board. Shout outs to Spencer O'Gara and James Atwood for putting together this mock draft spreadsheet, so you can just get a look at the names right there.
Kellen Lindsley is definitely an interesting one. Left-handed catcher out of high school.
Well, I thought Lindsey's a shortstop.
Was he the shortstop? Am I mixing up 2 players here?
Yeah, I think you got him confused for Malcolm Moore. He was a Stanford catcher that bats left-handed.
Okay. A couple names. I saw Christian Moore played for Tennessee, College World Series cycle. I saw him dropping kind of low in some mock drafts. I saw a lot of them had him going in around, he was an All-American, and a lot of them had him going in the 10-20 range, but I saw him kind of falling all the way to 22 at 1. Obviously, I think it would be a little bit of a reach for the Diamondbacks to get him. Hit 375, 34 home runs. That was a name I would love to see the Diamondbacks get. Another one was Tommy Troy. He is the third baseman for LSU. I saw him fall all the way down to 25 in some mock drafts. Obviously, has the bat. And so those are a couple of names that I kind of just saw from the College World Series that I was looking into that I saw kind of falling a little bit further in the draft. And then I had Dakota Jordan with Mississippi State. He had a walk-off homer in regionals, hit 354 last year, 220 pounds, muscular dude. Another one kind of in that 20 range, where if the Diamondbacks, if he was still on the table, I think the high school, you're seeing it more and more over the years where teams are looking for that high school talent. I mean, we saw it with Corbin Carroll. But like you said, the Diamondbacks are in an odd situation where they're not exactly in they're not in a rebuilding phase, but they're not exactly there. So they're kind of figuring out what to do. So I wouldn't mind to see more college rather than high school prospects, because I do think there is kind of a need to get those prospects up sooner rather than later based off how the Diamondbacks are in their stage of as a franchise.
Yeah, because look, college performance like a Christian Moore is not going to fall to the Diamondbacks. Like, you could take that to the bank. Like, Moore's floor, I think, is 15. Guy with the performance that he has,
21. And I was
I'll be shocked if I'll be shocked if he's on the board at 16.
I think Red Sox were the team that most of them had him go to.
Yeah, a team like the Red Sox will definitely take him.
Yeah, that's.
And then you look at Tommy White out of LSU. White's probably not as strong a track record as Moore, I think. He's not playing up the middle position. I could see him slide a little bit, but it would be a stretch for him to make it all the way down to 29. Now, Dakota Jordan very well could slide all the way down to 29, in my opinion.
Ryan Walshman was the other name that I had out of Kentucky, 1.248 OPS. hit 333 senior year.
Yeah, Waldschmidt's a guy I would be shocked if he's on the board past the 20th pick. Like, there's some of these guys I think would have pretty good skill set. Maybe they don't have elite tools, but they have the track record. Teams may opt to take more of a shorthanded thing, save some money, and then make an upside play with their second pick. Diamondbacks being one of those teams, wouldn't be surprised to adopt that strategy.
Who are you adding? Who are you eyeing for them?
So, like I said, it's going to depend on the college crop. Like, if I had to choose between the two catchers, between Yannick and Moore, I prefer Yannick because he's going to stick at catcher. Even if the bat's going to be, in my opinion, a little subpar, he's going to probably be an 8th place hitter that you have to kind of bury in the lineup to make sure that he's not getting too many important bats. But at a position where defense is at a premium and he has a plus throwing arm, you'll live with that. Most of his issues as a catcher are pretty fixable with experience and reps. Malcolm Moore, on the other hand, has the bat, but there are concerns about his ability to stick at catcher because of a below average throwing arm.
Yeah, I need to look more into the pitchers. I think that's where, and you're seeing it this season, kind of a lack of. I think they have enough stats. I do think that, and over the past years, they haven't been focusing on pitching in the first couple of rounds. So I do think there is kind of that need for some more arms coming in, and there's always a plethora of arms available in the draft.
Yeah, I don't think Arizona spent a top. I could be wrong. I'll have to be quoted on this, but I think Slade Ciccone is the last top 50 pick that Diamondbacks have spent on a pitcher.
That was 2020.
And that was 2020. Oh, wait, no, that's not true. Landon Sims.
Yeah.
And 22 was 34. So Slade Ciccone and Landon Sims and Bryce Jarvis have been the last 3 pitchers they've taken with a top 50 selection. I know they took Bryce at 63 last year. But of course, the 2019 draft is pretty weird because the Diamondbacks had essentially 4 first-round picks, and 3 of them were pitchers.
Yeah,
And I think they took 4 pitchers. They took Walston. They took Brendan Malone, who got traded for Starling Marte. They took Dre Jameson. And then in the second round, they took Ryan Nelson. And then with another second round pick, they took Tommy Henry. So they got 5 pitchers out of that draft. That's really the last time the Diamondbacks went pitching heavy with starting pitcher candidates. I know last year they took a lot of relievers. But yeah, that's basically all I have.
Yeah.
Unless you want to talk about Jurangelo Cijntje, who's basically the biggest wild card in the draft. Can't wait to see what happens when Rob Manfred has to pronounce his name. They probably put the pronunciation on the card. But yeah, he could go anywhere from 20 to 30, in my opinion, especially if teams view him as a starting pitcher. I know he's known for the switch pitching thing, but I think he's going to end up being a pure right-hander. So that's about just the early list of names to focus on when we get to the draft on Sunday. It'll be a pretty hectic day for the both of us, I would agree, because you got the game, then you got the draft, and then you got what the team's going to say about the draft afterwards. So there's a lot of stuff to worry about. Fortunately, you got the home run derby the next day, so you got plenty of time to sneak all that stuff in.
Yeah. I'm glad they lowered the rounds on the draft. What was it? I think,
yeah,
what is it? 40? Is it
15 years ago was 50 rounds, and then then in the 2012 CBA they shrunk it down to 40.
Yeah.
And then in the 22 CBA they shrunk it down to 20.
Yeah, 40 rounds. I mean, that is the amount of personnel that takes to collect a draft board of 40 rounds and to figure out, I mean, at that point, I can't imagine there's much thought going into those 39th and 40 round picks.
Usually, you just take guys that you just like, or
Like the name.
somebody in the organization's kid or something
Yeah.
like that. When you get that deep in the draft.
Yeah, I cannot imagine doing that. That is a long day. Well, a long couple days.
Yep. Tom Candiotti's son is going to be in the draft this year. I could see the D-backs taking him in the third day. Coming off a pretty good senior season with the University of Arizona. So, any final thoughts before we wrap it up here?
No, I don't believe so.
So, thanks everyone for watching. Make sure to check us out at the Burn City D-backs talk, X at Burn City D-backs, or on YouTube at Burn City Sports. So, once again, I'm Michael McDermott here with Jacob Hardin. Wishing you a good rest of the week, and we'll be back next Monday to talk about the draft.